Hi, this is Andy White with John Broughton on Retrospectives on 3SER KC Radio.
I noticed on a promotional blurb for the record it says it sounds like U2 playing Velvet Underground songs at Womadelaide.
Yeah, well, it's definitely got an Irish thing, it's got a world music thing, and it's a lot rockier overall than my last couple of records. Really, it started after I had co-written for a number of years with quite a few people. I guess the ones you might have heard of would be Tim Finn. I was in a group with him called Out. Then I've written with Kieran Kane and a root songwriter in Canada called Stephen Fearing for his group, who are called Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, who are a great group. And I started my own solo project thinking it would actually be a collaborations album with using lots of the songs I'd co-written for other people. Mm-hmm. But if you do co-write for a long time, you're almost living the lives of all the other people you're writing with, and it actually does your head in after a while. And I felt I was turning a bit schizophrenic. So what I did was I got out my laptop, and it has a program on it called Garageband, and I got out my string acoustic and basically taught myself how to use this very simple program and wrote exactly what first came to mind, using the beat poet first thought, best thought kind of strategy for 2 weeks. And I wrote a song a day. I just told myself I'd write a song a day, and that was the start of Garageband, the record.
Did that concept, that U2 Velvet Underground Womadelaide thing, was that something that crossed your mind before recording the CD? Was that a concept you always had in mind, that mix?
Well, it came through after various things. Like my songwriting uses I get most excited at the simplest amount of chords and the most interesting choices of instrument. And when I'd written the songs, I took them to this great English producer friend of mine who's called John Leckie, who has produced something that everybody who's listening would have something that he produced or recorded, like Radiohead's Band's album, or the Stone Roses album, or Pink Floyd, or Roy Harper, an English musician. He recorded many albums of Roy Harper. Bebop Deluxe, like, he's a really serious guy, and I'm honoured to call him a close friend, really. And I played him the two sets of songs. I played him the collaboration songs, and I played him the Garageband songs. And he thought that at the moment we should go for the Garageband songs. And as soon as that happened, I knew that they would be rockier. We booked a day at Real World Studios in England, Peter Gabriel Studios, and because I have played at many WOMADs, I got it very cheaply, and we went in there with a great drummer called Liam Bradley, who's played with a lot of great Irish groups and is one of Van Morrison's drummers, but he's a very rocky drummer. And once he was involved and the songs, I knew that it would be kind of a U2 thing. And because it was at Real World, all the things were pointing towards including a lot of the world music sounds and vibes, which I've come across over the last few years playing with on WOMAD festivals across the world, including Womadelaide in Australia. So those are how those sort of things came through. And then I'm a big Lou Reed fan. Like, I love his way of writing words and delivering them, and I've always loved that. And if I ever just write songs for fun, I know that lots of the vocals are going to come out like that, so in my Irish accent. So that's the kind of way those different influences came through, I think.
So it wasn't so much when you first sat down at the computer with these songs, it was during the recording process?
No, I tried to think of nothing, John, which is actually quite difficult these days, to think of just to clear your mind, not to not to worry too much about what the song's going to sound like. A lot of people, when they sit down to write now, they're either with people or on their own. They're thinking of what the end product's going to be like, what it's going to be. It's very hard to get back to that purity of writing when you're a young man or a young woman or a child writing poetry or writing stories. And that place as a child, I'm especially interested in, where your response to the world in terms of language and music is very naive and uncluttered by people telling you for years and years what they think of your music and your writing, which eventually really depresses most people. And some people, it means they end up not speaking to anybody about their music, not speaking to the press, not speaking to radio stations or anything, because they're always being told things about their music, because it's so difficult to reach that place where you just are making music or writing without having to think about the reactions of other people to it.
How important was it for you this time to actually write an album of material yourself after doing so much co-writing? Was it something of a self-inflicted challenge of sorts?
Yes, because when you're with somebody else, you're either making compromises or you're relying on them to come up with something when there's a gap there. So it's quite a challenge to yourself to say that you're not going to have somebody else finish that line off or whatever. So it is quite a challenge for yourself, yeah. And it meant I could put in all the ideas. I mean, there's an awful lot of ideas on this record, and I could just put them all down because nobody's going to tell me not to, except for John. And I respect him so much that I'd realised I'd done a wrong thing. If he was going to do the mix, if he was mixing the record and I'd put in a nose flute solo and he didn't like it and he wanted to take it out, then I respect him enough to take it out. But if you're just two artists sitting there looking at each other, then that's where the arguments begin. So I just found it very relaxing to do it this way.
So how do you set yourself to write a song a day?
Well, it's like an art project that I just had to do it, and that was part of the excitement of it, was coming up with an arrangement and the lyrics and everything very quickly. Because I tell you, if you've spent 3 months sitting looking at and singing a verse or like a middle eight or something and changing it, refining it, changing all the prepositions from and to but and rhyming to with shoe, and when you're really taking a song apart, it's great, but sometimes you lose the song itself. So again, I was trying to get back to the actual writing of it. It's a bit like the Altitude album. The Alt album was actually recorded like that as well, in the moment almost of writing the song, and it's a very exciting moment to capture. And some great rock records, I think, used to be recorded like that, but they're not very many anymore.
So you think, now that you've achieved that rate of songwriting, tuning them out like that, and done it successfully, do you think maybe perhaps in the past you may have laboured too much over some songs?
Over some things, yeah. But if you look back on records, like I might look at my Out There album, which was probably the most successful in Ireland, in the south of Ireland anyway, Looking for James Joyce's Grave. The lyrics of that were written immediately without any changes. They were recorded, so it wasn't recorded as quickly as it was written, but it was written as quickly as you listened to it. And there was a song on Boy 40 called Lisa, which was like that. A lot of the narrative songs of mine throughout the years have been done like that. There was one called All of the Things I Can Bring on Teenage, which is I really like, and it's like that as well. But not very many of them were recorded like that, but quite a few of them were written like that, and it's a good way to write.
You mentioned how the writing process this time felt like it was setting you free. Had you been feeling stifled in your writing up in recent times?
Oh no, it was only that if you have to co-write a book, or if you have to host a radio station with two people on it, you're always going to have to just make compromises, and usually co-writing improves songs, so I've been just very lucky to be able to do both. But in some ways, I didn't want anybody really telling me how to write songs for a while. I just wanted to do it myself for a bit.
Now, not being too technically minded and not owning an Apple computer, tell us about the Garageband program that you used this time.
Yeah, it's on everybody who's got one, got Apple Mac. A, got the software which I wrote the album with, and B, has got part of my record on it, because I used it. It comes with a lot of sounds and loops and atmospheres, which you can use very, very easily, and which are public domain. In other words, you can release them or do whatever you like with them. And I had read that David Bowie, who's a real hero of mine, used to use this program sitting in the back of the tour bus writing stuff. It's very good for getting ideas down very quickly, and it's just like a very simplified version of the systems which are in recording studios nowadays. So it's like a very easy to use multi-track tape recorder, but as well as yourself, you can put on top of what you're doing, you can add an awful lot of beautiful sounds and samples from other places, or which you can make up yourself, and arrange the songs very, very quickly. So it's a great piece of gear. Yeah.
Do you think you'll use it again?
I don't know. I've got a few more. I wrote 2 or 3 songs after the album, which have sort of joined the collaborations record now, and I'm not sure if I would approach the whole album like that again. It's a peculiar thing. It's very, very prevalent in the UK anyway, is that people, when they do a new record, they're always looking for a new thing to do on the new record. And I've noticed in very many countries that people get almost annoyed at you if you change direction between the albums, because they really want you to do the previous album again, if possible. And if you live in the UK and you grew up in the UK and you follow UK groups, a very great amount of the time when a person puts out a new record, there is a new story with it, or they're doing something in a new way. And I probably wouldn't. I would use some of the things I've learned on this one, but I'd probably do it different, because I like each record to be different for me.
Talk about the recording and the mixing process on the album. It went from the UK to here in Australia and then off to Italy, didn't it?
Yeah, that's easy to do now. It's amazing. In years gone by, you'd have had to have a lot of excess baggage, because the tapes would have weighed, I don't know how much they weighed, 2-inch tapes, but a lot. Very heavy things, kilos and kilos each one. And you'd have had like one per song, so you'd have had 12 of these things to lug around. But now you can put it in your pocket, the whole album. It's very strange. It's very, very different to what it used to be. So when I'd done the work with John's production notes in Melbourne on the record, using some great Melbourne musicians like Tony Floyd on drums, and who played extra tracks as well as Liam, and Monique Brumby sang a lot of backing vocals on it, and there were other girls as well I got in to sing backing vocals. As soon as we'd finished all the Melbourne tracks, brought them back to Europe where John was going to mix them, and we ended up mixing in Italy, because there's a particular desk which John loves, and which is an old English desk, because old English producers like old English desks, and in England they're too expensive to rent, but in Italy I knew somebody who had one, and that's why we went there.
Do you think this has been probably the most challenging of all your works to date?
It's been a huge production. I mean, it's called Garageband, but it sounds like a very big garage. It sounds like an aircraft hangar, because there's an awful lot going on on it. And it's been, I think it's been the most exciting. I mean, Boy 40, I loved going back. That's the last one. I loved going back to the way I really started, where I played everything on the record. And this is very different for me, having so many great live musicians on it.
Yeah.
But I've kind of retained that quirky thing, because you can hear a lot of the original recordings I made on this record, so which would have been more like the Boy 40 style bits are still there on this record. I can still hear them.
Is that right? I read one of Keith Moon's drums was used on the set.
Oh, right. Oh, no, that's really just Tony. When we recorded, there's 14 songs, and I think Liam Bradley, the Irish drummer, played about 10 of them, and then Tony had to play another 4 in Melbourne, and just the last track we did on the last day, if you could have seen him, it was like Animal from the Muppets. And he was telling himself he was Keith Moon. For that afternoon, he was Keith Moon for that afternoon. Because it's a specific style of playing the drums, and you can't do it for very long. But he certainly did it on that track, which is called No Way Out.
Now, you're a few years into your Australian adventure now. Has it been all you hoped for here?
Well, we arrived not knowing it was Australia Day on January the 26th. We got into taxi in the 40-degree heat at the airport, and the taxi driver was talking about barbecues and sitting outside, taking it easy. And we were driving through empty street after empty street, thinking, well, Australia's extremely relaxed, isn't it? And so that's why I know exactly how long we've been here, because it's just passed.
Right.
And it's still new every day for us.
So you're still here for the long haul?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a lovely way of life you have here. Growing up in Belfast was a bit tough, and it was a very great pleasure to come to a country with as much space in it as here, and as friendly an outlook, really. I've been very lucky here.
Do you think you're writing a different type of song since you moved down here? Has the change of environment had an influence on your music?
Well, I can hear it in the last 2 records which were written here. I don't know if anybody else can, but I can definitely hear it. But then I can picture the songs in a different way than other people.
Yeah.
Listening, it's very difficult, that. And specifically, there are songs on Bowie 40 especially which couldn't have been written anywhere else. I remember the Bally bomb happening and writing Everything You've Got specifically about feeling really sad that Australia was having to deal with something which Northern Ireland had to deal with, on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And, for example, and this record is maybe not so specific, but I can kind of, I have a different picture in my head of the record, because I know what I'm looking at when I'm writing it and everything, and the beautiful gum trees and everything, all the things which you guys would look out at and you just know it's your home country. But for me, it's home, but it's very different. Like everything's looking different for me, so it's interesting.
You certainly haven't become a homebody since you've been here, though. You're still touring extensively overseas, despite the extra distance that would be involved.
Yeah, I've kind of got to, John.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great fun. It's not easy, but I've got to. There's no way I can earn a living just by living here, because for me it's a bit like, not that I'm a big deal in Europe, but for me it's a bit like starting again in Australia.
Yeah.
So every time is like a tightrope walk. Like I'm playing the Northcote Social Club to launch this record on the 17th of February, and just hoping that people will turn up. Really, it's an adventure every time I do it, and I never know if it's going to go well or not.
Has it made touring more of a grind for you?
It's made it more important when I go away that it's more important to try to play the best places in Europe, because if you're living in Europe and you go to Germany and you play 10 concerts in Germany and 6 are good and 4 are terrible, it's kind of okay, because then you go home again. But if you're coming from Australia, you've got to make sure that nearly everything you do is as good as it can be.
Yeah.
But that's a lifelong thing. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to change, that you're always trying to play just the best places. And certainly in Australia, it's interesting trying to, I think, you can play here too much, as well as you just have to try and play the best places possible.
Yeah.
And I've selected this place. I think this place in Northcote is a cool venue. It sounds really great, and the concerts I've seen there I've really enjoyed, so I'm hoping it's going to go well.
Right, so you have become quite selective in the shows that you do here.
I think so, yeah. I played some places. I got a band together and played some hotels and things, and I didn't. It was great fun and great practice, but it's strange. You can't tell. I think that people go out to places that they really like rather than wherever you play. They'll only go to places where they think they're going to have a good evening and they want to see you play.
Now, you got this gig on the 17th at Northcote. They're going to be backed by the Garageband Philharmonic Orchestra.
That's exactly right, in all their magnificence.
Who makes up the orchestra?
Well, Monique will be singing, Monique Brumby, who I'm sure you know, and is the frontwoman, obviously, but she's a fantastic backing vocalist, and she'll join me on the duets which she does on the record. There's one called A Long Time Coming, especially, where she's featured. And because I really wanted to feature women's voices throughout the record, because it's very important to me, that linking the male thing with the female thing. And Chris and Rob are going to play bass and drums, and I'm going to play it's the only place in the world when I play where I can bring lots of my guitars to the gig, so I'm going to play lots of my guitars, or at least I'm going to have them on stage.
And after that, what else is coming up for you in 2007?
Port Fairy.
Oh, you're doing Port Fairy?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And that's after Sydney and Adelaide and Brisbane. And then I go to America, Canada and Europe in March, April and May. So it's really, this is the major assault on playing Australia this year. I might have a residency in Melbourne. I'm going to try and do one thing a week somewhere in the city later in the year, but right now this is the only thing I've really organised in Australia.
Now, the album has been out overseas for a few months, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been out since October, but in Australia it's got a different cover. Well, a sort of slightly different cover, and it's on a different record company. It's on our own record company here, so it's pretty exciting that it's coming out here.
And how's it been doing overseas?
Oh, well, yeah. I think it's done well. We haven't really heard. I mean, you get a vibe from the reviews and stuff, but you don't really know how many people bought it until for about 6 months. So cross your fingers. Just all you can do is work as hard as you can and hope it goes well.
And any thoughts in mind for the next album at this stage?
Yeah, well, I'll probably be saying in a year from now, I'm fed up with writing my own. I really miss those days when I was writing with other people and go back to my collaborations album idea, because that's probably what I would do next, would be collect together the songs I've written with other people and then go and record them somewhere.
I'll look forward to that, and we'll look forward to the gig at the Northcote Social Club on the 17th.
Great, John. Thanks very much.
Andy, thanks for taking time out to catch up with us after midnight and all that.
It's a pleasure.
Do appreciate that. Best of luck with the new CD.